Over the past few days, I've done 9 customer interviews for a new product. Here's what I've learned. If you don't know me, my name's Andrew Pierno. I'm the co-founder of Exo Capital, and I mostly buy and sometimes build software companies. Although we've bought 11 deals, I had this idea for a new product and decided to build it from scratch. And before doing so, I decided to do a bunch of customer interviews. Just kidding. I built the whole thing first and then did the interviews. So even though I'm doing things a little bit backwards, I do think there's still value in this exercise. So for me, I'm a software engineer, so really the risk when I go and build something is that I wasted a couple weeks of time. So I happened to be on vacation, I was building something. This product actually was really fun to build, so it didn't really feel like my sort of stressful build something, launch it, nothing happens, kill it before even trying to market it. Like that cycle, I think that I circumvented that by just kind of having fun during the build process, especially while on vacation. Like I just wake up a bit early and code for a couple hours in the morning. So I built a little MVP and then started doing the customer interviews. So I sent about 1,000 emails to people that are on a different product that I've built before. So they had some familiarity with me. Some people knew me from Exo. Some people knew me from this other product. But I got 19 meetings and I've done 9 of those meetings so far. The difficulty I'm running into now is that I have rich media, right? So I have video, I have tone, all of these questions that I've asked. It's interesting to try and figure out how I can squeeze all the juice out of these interviews and come out with something meaningful, directional, and ideally correct so that I can start to sell the product to new customers that will actually start paying for it. Overall though, as difficult as it is to get these meetings most of the time, especially for me, or maybe this is a me thing, it's extremely worth it. The people that I met were really thoughtful, they really cared. One problem I think is that they were all a bit too nice. That being said, they still had some very interesting things to say. Stuff came up in conversation that I don't think that I would have thought about by myself. You can sometimes over time get these insights by product analytics, etc. But it's much easier this early in the process just to have somebody come up with the idea that would take you maybe a week or a month or 6 months to notice. And these are all quite specific. So one example of something very specific that came out that I hadn't thought about was onboarding new clients. So in this context, this founder has a service company. And when they close the deal, so they kind of all go through a similar process, right? There's some kind of outbound or content at the top of funnel. They try and hop on a meeting. After that meeting, they typically send some kind of document or some invoice or some pricing, etc. They maybe hop on a second call and try and close them on the second call, or they don't even have the second call. But once they do close the deal, one interesting thing that came up is sometimes they have to spend hours onboarding a new customer. So getting access to their systems, getting all the information the service company needs to perform the service. This is a huge headache. It oftentimes takes a couple meetings. It's new for the client every time, but it's repeatable. So a lot of times they will send over, sometimes they will send Loom videos, sometimes they'll have just a PDF document, but most of the time, because these are sort of high ticket, high touch type sales, they don't want to just send a string of Loom videos or a 45-minute Loom video or YouTube series to go do it. They want something a little bit more interactive, and that is potentially where Demo Monster as a product could come in and help them onboard new customers faster. Now getting into more detail, there's another interesting, not quite competitor, but an adjacent product that I should spend some more time thinking about how it relates to my product, and that product's Trainual. So Trainual is used to onboard new employees. You can have courses basically with progress and quizzes at the end for how your employees should do a particular task for your service company. And it's not, again, competitive directly, but I do need to spend a little bit more time thinking about how, if anywhere, my product could be useful in that context of employee onboarding. So these kind of 2 use cases, employee onboarding and then new customer onboarding, were both very interesting things that I hadn't really thought about before. I had thought about this in the context of just SaaS as a product demo tool, potentially to be used on a homepage or potentially to be used in some kind of sales process, but not really for customer onboarding and certainly not employee onboarding. The other aspect of this that I haven't hit on quite yet with the people that I've spoken to are SOPs, so standard operating procedures. Once you get above a certain employee count or you have multiple virtual assistants that are doing tasks for you, you almost need to have some kind of documentation for getting them up to speed on how you want a thing done, or you're going to have to spend a bunch of hours in meetings telling them how you want a thing done, both of which could potentially be optimized, and that's kind of where this SOP landscape comes in. Another competitor came up too during these conversations, Storylane. So far I have Storylane and I have SuperDemo as directly competitive products, and I still need to do a bit more thinking and digesting around how I can position Demo Monster against Storylane and against SuperDemo. TBD on how exactly I'll do that, but these are the right questions to be asking right now. And before I jump in and start coding a bunch of features, I think it's really important to get this positioning correct, and it's really important to get this differentiation correct. Otherwise, and what I ran into with a different product I started called SuperSend, basically we were competing against Instantly or Lemlist, and SuperSend needed a metric ton of features to be directly competitive with these products, which it is now, but it was almost impossible to sell somebody on the idea of switching before we were at feature parity with the competitor. So this is one of the dangers of building something that already exists in the market, is typically, unless you have something that's very different, you're going to have to get close to feature parity with an existing competitor in the space before somebody's reasonably going to switch to you for a similar price. And one more insight here. Another thing that came up during these conversations, it was really interesting to hear one particular software company who sold to multiple stakeholders. So in their sales process, there were 4, 6, sometimes 8 other stakeholders that were involved in the decision to buy the software or not. This is a lot. And it's very difficult to communicate to all 8 people the exact value props that each one of them cares about. And potentially Demo Monster could be used in that context, in a sales context with multiple stakeholders, to drive different points home to different people. So you might have a demo that caters to the CFO, you might have a demo that caters to the IT admin, you might have a more technical demo that shows maybe some behind the scenes of how the system's architected or something like that, or the security parts of it. And if you have multiple stakeholders, and then you also on your team have multiple salespeople or multiple people giving these demos, having Demo Monster as the reference from which people are demoing might be a better way to communicate effectively and consistently to all the stakeholders involved. Now, the big question is, does that convert better than a Google Doc? Does that convert better than Slides? Does that convert better than Google Slides? It's hard to say at this point. That is the big question, so this thing can be built. Everyone I've spoken to, again, this goes back to, I think, people being nice. Everyone tends to see value. I haven't seen any of these people jump in yet and really go ham and say, oh, wow, I have 10 different use cases that I could use this thing for. Let me go build one of these immediately because I'm so excited. I didn't see that. And that is maybe not a red flag, but it's certainly a yellow flag. These people that say, yes, I see value here, but then took no action after the call. I think that that's a really telling sign that we haven't really locked into an ICP or a value proposition yet that resonates and solves a burning problem. It's also possible that Demo Monster doesn't solve a burning problem. I think SOPs could be a burning problem if you're growing quickly and people are flubbing simple things just because they haven't had the time with you or the education to do a thing right. That could be a burning problem. But in the context of sales, what I find is that a lot of sales tools, I enjoy selling and building sales tools because it's always clear, or it's at least closer to the revenue, so that you can point to your product and say, roughly, this product brought in more money, or not, right? And then they churn. But if it does bring in more money, then selling sales tools is great, because that sale is easier when your product touches revenue in some way by lowering costs or increasing revenue. Sales tools in general, people are much more willing to experiment with them, but that stickiness is much more difficult to crack. So it feels like Demo Monster at the moment, and this is normal, will have relatively higher churn before we get locked into a burning problem that this thing solves. Or it might be the case that the churn is sort of systemically high because it is a sales tool, And sort of like Super Send, a lot of times people try stuff and they, give up on it after a couple months. Some people stay, but many people choose to try a different tool or a different way, or something becomes hot and then they go and kind of chase that novelty thing. And I'm trying to figure out how Demo Monster cannot be a novelty type sales tool. If it needs to start that way, I think that that's okay, right? We got to get some traction somewhere. Long-term, Demo Monster will not consistently grow to the scale that I want it to if we have a leaky bucket. So these are some of the initial insights from the customer interviews. I still have about 8, 10 more to go, depending on how many people show up, but these have been extremely valuable so far. I think if I can be disciplined about this, I should never build something and launch it before doing these customer interviews. I don't think I can hold myself to doing the customer interviews before I build something, but I think I can hold myself to not launching a thing publicly before having and investing a lot more time in engineering to before talking to at least 5, 10 people. So thanks for watching. I started writing under Buy, Build, Grow, a little Beehive newsletter, and started putting stuff out through my through a different channel. I used to write exclusively about XO and for XO, and it just felt like this is a space where I can talk about XO and some other stuff that I'm working on.